feast for these gods. It's not enough just to praise them. And so they came up with this ritual called the Yagna, where they would actually feed the gods, nurture the gods, pour their love and their food and their prayers and their worship into the fire, into a sacred fire, and believing that the fire would take the prayers from earth to heaven, and then they would be able to get what they want. So they believed it was a cyclical thing. There was a circle of gratitude and nurturing. It was not just that the gods were nurturing men. That was not their responsibility. That was not their purpose. As the gods nurtured men, the men had to nurture the gods. So it was a sacred cycle of give and take between gods and men. And in fact, that is what we have breached now. Our part of the contract we have breached. The gods of nature are still giving, and we have not kept up our part of the contract. And that is what Greta Thunberg is talking about. We haven't kept up our part of the bargain. Okay, we have polluted the waters, we have polluted the skies, the air, we have cleared the forests, we have tortured the earth. We haven't treated them like the gods they are. Anyway, so there was the earlier, first layer was about prayer, pure prayer. The second layer was about yajna, which was ritual. By this time, what had begun to happen was that the ritual had become so important and so primary to everything that people forgot what the reason for the ritual was. That the reason was in fact gratitude and things like that. And it became about who has the bigger yajna. How many Brahmins did you feed? How many sweets did you serve at your yajna? Oh, only 5, we served 7. It became about that, and people forgot the whole basis of it. And society also became stratified depending on who was doing what job in the yajna. So there was great dissatisfaction among a lot of people, and two of the greatest, who came from very powerful strata of society, the Kshatriyas, two of them said, if this is what the Vedas are like, if they say that one is greater than the other, and if it's really all about, showing off and things like that, then I reject the Vedas. I reject this whole body of texts. I'm going to find the truth somewhere else. And they walked away from this tradition and found 2 princes, and they founded 2 separate religions, and we know them as Jainism and Buddhism. They walked away. But there were others within the tradition who said that a tradition that has sustained our forefathers for so many years, hundreds and hundreds of years, cannot be all wrong. Maybe something got lost in translation. Maybe what is required now is to revisit the original texts and see what they actually might have meant. And these people wrote the third, not even wrote, composed the 3rd and 4th layers of the Vedas, the later layers. The 3rd layer was called the Aranyakas. They are also books of wisdom. Why they're called Aranyakas? It comes from Aranya. They went away to the forest. They meditated on the truths. They were, by the way, you must remember that all these people knew their first 2 layers inside out. They had been brought up in that tradition, but they needed to get away and reflect on it themselves to come up with alternative interpretations. So the Aranyakas are the 3rd layer, and they were different interpretations. And the last layer, there were others who said, I know all this, I don't need to revisit the text. I just need to think about what all I have read, and maybe I can come up with actual truths, maybe a different interpretation. And these rishis who went away and wrote the last metaphorical layer of the Vedas, that last layer was called the Upanishads. Okay, and because the Upanishads are the last layer of the Vedas, they are also referred to as Vedanta, the end of the Vedas. You can think of it as the end of the Vedas in the sense that you come to it after having studied all the Vedas. You can think of it as once you have read this last layer, there's no need to go back to the Vedas. Instead of, you can think of it as the Anta of the Vedas, the end of the Vedas, or you can think of it as Veda Siddhanta. The highest truth of the Vedas is contained in this last layer called the Upanishads. Now, what did the Upanishads say? So basically, they said, you guys, you're getting it all wrong. The yajna is not about creating this massive fire, inviting so many thousands of people, and sacrificing so many animals and putting so much into the fire and walking around swaggering, saying my yajna was bigger than yours. What they meant by the fire of the yajna was not an external fire. The fire that needs to be tended is the fire inside you, the internal fire that is always burning in search of the truth. That is the yajna fire that needs to be kept burning. And what do you need to offer into that fire? Not animals, not ghee, not soma, not food. What you need to offer into that fire, because fire, as we know, is Vaishvanara, the great consumer. It consumes everything. And what you need to throw into that fire are all your negative qualities, your ego, your jealousy, your sloth, your negative emotions, your thoughts, bad thoughts. Throw it all inside, and Agni, the great purifier, will make you pure and lead you as the flame does towards the higher plane of existence. So they actually, the composers of the Upanishads, the sages who composed the Upanishads, actually rejected everything that had gone before. They said, you don't need to pay that so much attention. This is what is relevant. And the greatness of Vedavyasa is that he included the Upanishads within the Vedas. He included a part of the Vedas that said everything before was wrong within that text, which gives us one of the first lessons of parenting and what we should encourage our children to do. Entertain two opposing thoughts at the same time. It's fine. Always leave room for questioning and doubt. There is no the truth, ultimate truth. There might be, but it'll take us several lifetimes to get there. So while we are in the process of getting there, don't get stuck in the rut of this is the truth and nothing else is the truth. Leave your minds open. And for that, as parents, you need to have that atmosphere in the house where questioning is encouraged, even when your children question you. Okay. In fact, that is so in all our cases, very objectively, yes, questioning should be encouraged. Excellent. One, you question the government, question that person, question that shopkeeper, question everybody. You're questioning me. Hello, you're questioning me. That is not allowed. So, then that's how we ruin our own parenting lessons. But we need to know that this is a great tradition of India and of the Indian text, is to allow for questioning. That is why even the Vedic religion allows everyone to practice it exactly as they like. Each of us can worship any god that we like in any form and worship him. First of all, the god in Indian philosophy is not him or her, that it's genderless, formless, nameless. But because that might be too abstract a concept, we are allowed to imagine it in whatever form that we would like, as a father, as a mother, as a child, as a lover. Anything is allowed. God in our tradition is not some all supreme father. No, definitely not. It can be anything that you want it to be. Friend is a very strong representation of, and that is most exemplified by the Gita. Arjuna and Krishna were best friends. That was their relationship. It wasn't a relationship, it was a relationship of equals, never one greater than the other. Okay, so first thing then is to question. Teach your children to question and let them start by questioning you. I'm telling you, when you allow your children to question you and you think about it and you rationally have a discussion, their respect for you will go up 100-fold. They will become such rational beings. They will become so reasonable because they'll say, this person is actually listening to me. Right? So that is one of the first lessons we learn just from how the Vedas are compiled. Just from that, we learn this. Right? Now, the Upanishadic sages did a wonderful thing. They dispensed all their wisdom through stories. And we know that stories, everybody loves to listen to stories. Storytelling is the best medium of getting somebody's attention. So I thought even today, what I will do is tell you stories from the Upanishads, and each one will illustrate something about parenting. So let's start with what you should not do as a parent. Okay, let's get that done with first, and then we'll go to what you should do. Because parents are always being told what you should do. Right? Let's start with what you shouldn't do. And I'll start with a part story from the Kathopanishad. Now, the Kathopanishad is one of the 10 principal Upanishads. There are 10 principal Upanishads, and there are 108 Upanishads in all, at least. Some say there are more. But of these 108, 10 are considered principal Upanishads only because the great Adi Shankaracharya in the 8th century decided that he would write commentaries on these 10. So everyone decided what was good enough for Shankara is good enough for us. So if he decided that these 10 were important, they're important. So these are the 10 principal Upanishads. And the Kathopanishad is one of them. And it's the core of the whole Kathopanishad is the story of Nachiketa. Some of you may have heard it. Some of you have some passing familiarity with it. Katha, sometime in my childhood, I read that Nachiketa story. Can't remember what it was, but so let me refresh your memory. So Nachiketa was the son of a sage called Vajashravas. And he was a great sage, much revered, and particularly favorite of his son, Nachiketa, who adored his father. Now, Vajashravas was conducting a great sacrifice during which he was giving away cattle, cows to poor Brahmins or poor people. So that was what was done, gift giving, a lot of gift giving during the yajnas. And it was a measure, it was a means to show that to be detached from worldly possessions, give away your possessions to somebody else. So here was Nachiketa. He was about 14 or 15, I'm guessing. And until now, he completely adored his father. And he was standing there watching his father give away these cows. And the Upanishad says, and as he was watching, Shraddha entered. Shraddha entered Nachiketa. Now, what is Shraddha? Shraddha is a faith, but it's the kind of, it's not a blind faith. It's a questioning faith. So Shraddha entered Nachiketa means suddenly he became from a switch flipped in his head. He stopped being a child. He became a teenager. And we all know what happens when children become teenagers, right? They question everything. They diss everything. They argue with anything you say. They want to look for their own identity. They have their own role models. You definitely are not one anymore. You were the adored parent till 5 minutes ago, and then suddenly you've lost them. So this is what happened to Nachiketa. He was watching, and suddenly, as he was looking, he said, excuse me, 1 second. Why is my dad giving away the old cows, the barren cows, the diseased cows? And for a moment, the child raised his head and said, no, he must not have realized. He's making a mistake. He wanted to give away the healthiest cows, but somehow he's made some mistake and he's been so busy, he's giving away the diseased cows. I should call it to his attention. So Nachiketa said, Dad, and Vajashravas turned around and saw the expression in Nachiketa's face and knew that he had been caught out. So he did not address him. He turned away and continued quicker giving away the cows. Let's get this over with quickly before this child asks embarrassing questions. So he continued giving away the cows. And Nachiketa, he's a symbol for persistence and perseverance in Indian mythology. Swami Vivekananda said, give me 12 youngsters with the persistence of a Nachiketa and I will turn this country around. He had said. So Nachiketa was one of those, stubborn, like pig-headed kids who would not listen. So he called again, Dad, I want to ask you a question, Dad. And Dad looked around and saw him and did not answer him again and started giving away the cows even faster. He knew what was coming. But Nachiketa cannot keep quiet. Now that he has this question, he has to ask, because he's thinking, my God, if my dad gives away these kind of diseased cows, there will be no place for him in heaven. He's going to not have a good afterlife. I have to call it out. It is for his good. Okay. And the second time then the third time he says, Dad, I'm asking you. And he was about to ask the question when Dad looked around and gave him such a glare that Nachiketa immediately realized that Dad knew exactly what he was doing and he was still doing it. And then he said, okay, my dad has been misguided. Maybe it's some evil spirit that has entered. I don't know what, but I still have to rescue him. So he thought quickly on his feet and said, you know what, if I ask if he's giving away all his precious possessions, what if he gives me away too? I am his most precious possession. If he gives me away, then all this will be cancelled. All the bad stuff about giving away diseased cows will be cancelled and he will earn the highest place in heaven, because who parts with a beloved son? So he said, Dad, who are you giving me away to? Vajashravas was like, what? Okay, he refused to look back at all this time. Dad, who are you giving me away to? Did not answer. Once again, Dad, who are you giving me away to? And by this time, Vajashravas's blood pressure was so high, I was going to burst a blood vessel. he turned around and yelled at his son, "You, I'm giving you away to death." And the world stopped, and Nachiketa was so horrified by what his beloved father had said. But he also realized that once words have been said, once a thought has been thought, once a deed has been done, there is no pulling it back. It is out there in the ether, and there's no pulling it back. So he said, "Okay, Dad, fine, I'm going. I'm going to death." And that's when the blood left Vajashravas's face, and he's like, "Lad, I didn't mean that. I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean that. I don't know what came over me, what emotion took charge of my head. I'm so sorry. Of course, I'm not giving you to death. You're not going." Nachiketa said, "Dad," with a wry smile, he said, "This is a path that so many have walked before. Many men will walk again. Man comes on this earth to ripen like a grain of, like a stalk of grain, and then he falls to be born again. It's fine. I'm going." And he walked away to the abode of death. And then, of course, there's a much more about the story where he goes to meet Yama. He walks 3 days, 3 nights, waits outside 3 days, 3 nights, and wondering what will this death be like. Imagine if you're going to meet death, what imaginations we have about what death should look like. So he was so terrified. And he sat on the stoop outside Yama's house, refusing to go inside and drink water or have anything to eat, even though people begged him. Of course, Yama was away on his buffalo somewhere collecting souls, so he wasn't there. He came back after 3 days, and he saw this child outside on the stoop, and he got so angry with his housekeepers. He's like, "What is this? Why have you left this child here? Can you not take care of him?" And they said, "We tried, he didn't want to come in at all. We tried everything." And Yama said, "I'm so sorry, Nachiketa, whoever you are. I don't know why you're here, but I'm so sorry that you've been waiting outside. So 3 nights you have waited outside, 3 boons. Ask me what you will." And Nachiketa is like, "Oh my God, death is very genial, man. He's very amiable. He's much sweeter than I thought. He's asking me for boons." And then the story goes on. But just this part of the story, what I wanted to illustrate is that, your children do not do as you say. They do as you do. So be very, very careful what you say and do in your children's presence. Because you may be thinking that, you are talking with somebody else and it's not to them. I'm always being so loving towards my children. It's only something that I'm doing with somebody else, with my parents, with my in-laws, with friends, with the domestic help, with whatever. But one part of your conscience, one part of your moral compass is within your children, and they are watching you in every minute. And as they say, as Nachiketa, said, there is some that Shraddha, if it enters them at that moment, you are done for, because it's very difficult to gain that respect back again. So be very, very careful, because once a thought is thought, and so that is one thing. Do not do. Do not let go of your control. Be very, very conscious that even though it seems as if nobody is watching you, your conscience in a child is watching you. So that is one thing of do not do. Second thing, another story from the Upanishads. This is from the Chandogya Upanishad, one of the most beautiful stories in the Upanishads. And some of you might have already heard it, because there was a curtain raiser event some 3 days ago where I told this story, but I'm going to say it again, and I crave your indulgence if you've heard it already. Anyway, it's a story that bears repeating because it is so beautiful. And it's about a woman, a single mom, actually, called Jabala, and her son, Satyakama. Now, Jabala was a very poor woman, and she lived in that no man's world between the village and the forest, where all the people who didn't belong in the village and did not belong in the forest either lived. Okay, so that's where she lived with her son, sort of an outcast from everybody else, very poor woman. And in the forest was the Gurukul of Rishi Gautama. And everybody was, all the king's sons, the top families of the land used to send their children to that Gurukul. And this boy who grew up on the edge of the forest was like, "I also want to go to that Gurukul. I also want to go. Mom, can I please go? I also want to go and learn." And Jabala knows very well that for admission into a Vedic Gurukul, one of the eligibilities is, your lineage. They will ask you, who's your father? Where do you come from? What is your family? And because because this was very sacred, precious knowledge, it had to be entrusted to very few students who had the capacity and the capability to keep it and pass it on. And usually those students came from families that were steeped in that tradition already. So that's why those families, children from those families would get preference over everybody else. Not that others would not, but they had to work much, much harder to get in. So for these people, it was automatic. So they would ask, whose child are you? And if you mention some famous person, some rishi whose family is known for their great scholarship, they will take you in immediately. But who is your father was an important question. And he used to say this from when he was very young. And Jabala said, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, you can go. We'll see. But, nobody goes until they're 12. So you chill out until you're 12. And after that, we'll see. And she was hoping that it was a phase and he would grow out of it and the realities of their life would somehow convey themselves to him and he would give up on this idea. But he did not. On the eve of his 12th birthday, he turned to his mom again and saying, tomorrow I can go, no? 12th birthday, I can go and ask for admission into this Gurukul. And the mother was like, oh my God, should I tell him that there is no chance he will get in? He can't even say who his father is. And she thought to herself, I have worked in so many homes. I have no idea who his father is. So that's all they say in the Upanishads, but it's such a heartbreaking story that I have worked in so many homes. I have no idea who his father is. What am I going to tell my child tomorrow? But she didn't say no. And the next morning, when he woke up, she dressed him up. She gave him something to eat and said go. And she said, before he left, she said, I must tell you something. And he said, yeah, mom. The sage Gautama, he's going to ask you, who is your father? Okay. So what should I say? He has no idea of what a minefield this is. So he's like, yeah, okay, tell me, what should I say? So Jabala says, you tell him that I asked my mother this question. She said she has no idea who my father is. But what she knows for sure is that I am her son. And so she said, I should tell you, my name is Satyakama Jabala. I am my mother's son. Okay. And she sent him off. Her heart was in her mouth and she's saying, now he's going to come back in the evening, crying, disappointed. And she started preparing about how she was going to protect him and support him and make sure his spirit was not broken by this rejection. Off he went, Satyakama, very happily, the light of curiosity and passion for learning in his eyes, went to Rishi Gautama's hermitage. Rishi Gautama welcomed him and saw this passion in this child's eyes and said, who are you, my son? Who is your dad? What is your dad's name? And this boy stood there and said, actually, I asked my mom, sir, and she said that she has no idea who my father is. But she said, I should tell you that I'm definitely her son. So my name, sir, is Satyakama Jabala. And Rishi Gautama was so overcome. He collected the boy into his arms. He said, welcome, my son, because no one but a Brahmin would have the courage to speak the truth so fearlessly. So come in. So this is also something that Krishna says in the Gita very clearly, that these castes or whatever is translated as caste in English is actually two different concepts. One is jati and one is varna. Neither of them is actually caste as understood in English. Jati is the kind of family you grew up in. That is the nurture part of you. The family you grew up in, whether you were surrounded by books or whether you were an artisan's child or whether you were a soldier's child. So some of it is nurture, what you are taught to value above all else. But Varna is nature. It's the color of your personality. And you are definitely a combination of nature and nurture. And so Krishna says very clearly that Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra are not dependent on your occupation or the family you were born into. It is defined by your nature. And there's no one nature superior or inferior to anything else. What is happiness comes when you align your nature with your work, with the jobs you do. So if you are a Brahminical in nature, in the sense that you don't like the hubbub of the battlefield, you don't like the noise of the marketplace, like a Vaishya, you don't like, that's not your nature. And you just want to be alone following solitary single quest, like a musician or a sportsman, find a job where you can do that. When you align your Varna with your occupation, that's when happiness is found. When you align your actions with your nature. Don't go by what the herd says. Everyone says you must be a CEO. Only that is admirable. But if you're not the kind of person who likes to manage people, if you like to be somebody who just works by himself or herself, understand that and do that. Okay, so what the parenting lesson from this whole Satyakama Jabala story is that what Jabala did was amazing and immense, something we should practice and we do not often do with our children. So often we transfer our own fears to our children. We think it won't happen, so we tell them, no, don't even try it. Forget it, it won't happen. Our own insecurities, our own limitations, we project them onto our children and keep them caged. We forget that they are old souls who have traveled through several lifetimes, who just happen to have come into this lifetime through you. And our job in this lifetime is only to nurture their bodies and minds. And then once we have done that when they're very little, to support them as they go after their own nature. Support them and facilitate their journey towards aligning themselves with their own nature, not to bore them into molds that we have pre-decided that they should fall into. And unfortunately, most of those molds are limited by our own limitations. We cannot think of them as bigger than those molds. And maybe they are. If you just give them wings to fly and allow them to be, they will. So Satyaka, imagine Jabala not telling him once that it was not possible. Instead, equipping him and allowing him to go. And that is why he could go and stand before Rishi Gautama so fearlessly and say, this is what my mom said. Without a trace of like embarrassment, guilt, nothing. What? This my mom told me. Whatever my mom says is Veda Vakya, so I will say it to you and you decide what to do. Right? That is the kind of courage we should give our children, because the whole thrust of Indian philosophy is not to chase happiness. We are not looking for a happy life, because the ancient sages, the rishis and rishikas, with their great insights and their great empathy and their great pragmatism, realize that happiness is but a transient emotion and a transient phase. It comes and goes, not to be taken seriously. No point chasing it, because the moment it is within your grasp, it slips away. What did they say we must equip ourselves with and our children with? We should bring them up to be fearless, to live in samsara fearless and free. That abhaya and mukt, jivan mukt, like while you're still alive, be free. You don't have to be dead to be free. While you're still alive, live fearlessly and free. So Satyakama's story tells us how to equip our children. Don't transfer our fears to our children. Let them be themselves fearless beings. Then the third one, let's see, another thing of what you should not do. You should not let your cup run dry. And this is a lesson that comes to us from the Taittiriya Upanishad. There is a sort of commencement address given at the end of like a graduating ceremony. And the guru says, do whatever you do with swadhyaya and pravachana. Whatever you do, swadhyaya and pravachana. What does that mean? Self-learning and teaching. Self-learning and teaching. That means your cup should constantly be poured out, refilled, poured out, refilled. Whether it is love or wealth or knowledge, don't keep it to yourself. If you let your cup become full and stay full, that is stagnation. That is not a good recipe at all. Once your cup is full, pass it on. Pass it on to somebody who needs it more than you do. Then your cup is empty, it can receive more. How do you receive more? By self-learning, also by listening to other people, of course, reading, listening, but a lot of it has to do with once you have that knowledge, reflect on it and synthesize it within yourself until you find like, this is what I mean. So just doing swadhyaya, learning, no point, because then your cup gets full. After a point, you can't take in anymore and there's no room for fresh ideas to flow in. So as soon as it becomes full, give it away. Compassion, give it away. Whatever you have more of, give it away. Then you allow new stuff to flow in. Teach your children also that way and do it with your children. The thing is, many of us, and if you keep teaching also, just pravachana is no point unless you fill your cup again. What's the point? So instead of saying that we know better than you, ask them to teach you. Let it be a two-way process. It's not only about learning their lingo and saying, cool and dude and all, but also about what are their worldviews. How is their world different from ours? Make space in your head, make space in your heart to accept things like I don't know what's the new one now. Maybe different sexual orientations, different career career paths, different things they want to do with their lives, different worldview. Allow that. Make space in your head to accommodate all that your children want, and fill up, fill up, fill up. Give away, give away, give away. Give what you have to other parents who are finding it hard to deal with these things. So that is all the things that you should not do. Don't let your cup fill up and stagnate. Now, quickly, we're already, of course, 17:45, but yeah, let's see what parents should do. Okay, I'll say it very quickly, and maybe I'll leave the stories out, or I'll speak very fast. Okay, so there is a lovely story in the Mundaka Upanishad, and it's about two birds, and these two birds are best friends. So this part is what you should teach your children to do. So there are two birds, and these two birds are best friends, and they're going through a forest and saying, let's find a lovely tree with the most luscious fruits, and we'll settle there for the rest of our lives. And they say, okay, let's find this tree. And then they find this, suddenly one of them comes across this beautiful tree laden with fruit, delicious, everything of a different color, everything looks so delicious. And they say, okay, I think we're provided for the rest of our lives, we'll stay here. And one of the birds started going after all the fruits that were hanging low, and said, I just want to taste this, I just want to taste this. And the other bird said, you know what, let's just go to the top and see what else is there. Let's not get stuck here. Let's go there and see, and we can come down and have a little bit whenever we are hungry. But this one was like more eager to try. And she said, you know what, you go ahead. I'm just going to sample a few things and come. I'll be right along. Just go. The other bird flew off to the top. This one started sampling, and the fruit was so delicious. She could not tear herself away. She finished one fruit and she said, okay, I'm full now. I think I should go up. Then she started flying up. Oh my God, that looks really good. So went after that, had a bit of that. Now, of course, she had made herself sick because she'd eaten much more than she needed to. And then she said, okay, let me just rest for a bit. My stomach is so heavy, cannot fly. Stayed there for a bit and then said, now I'm rested. Now I should go. But then another fruit, completely forgot that bird was waiting for her. And that other bird is sitting there still, not moving, watching the frenetic activity of the other bird below, and just sitting there and looking like a golden bird because it's completely bathed in sunlight. It's sitting there. This one has completely forgotten. Then the lower bird, let's call her the lower bird, went and goes after another delicious fruit and gags because this fruit is completely rotten. It's full of maggots. And she's like, oh my God, what is this? And then she's immediately feeling sorry for herself. Why do these things only happen to me? Look at all those other birds in the lower branches of the tree. They are all enjoying their fruit. All this horrible stuff only happens to me. Much self-pity. And then saying, you know what? I just need somebody's shoulder to cry on. And at that point, finally, she says, hey, wait, what happened? There was one friend who came with me, my best friend. Where did that one go? And she looks up and sees her sitting quietly there, golden in the sunlight. And she says, she will understand. I should go to her. Starts flying up, but immediately sees another lovely fruit and said, okay, I'll just try that one just to get this bitter taste out of my mouth. And the whole process starts once more until the lower bird has come upon 3 or 4 fruit that are terrible tasting. And then she says, no, this time I really, I'm the most wretched creature of all. I really need to cry to somebody and I have to go find that. And when this time, finally, she makes it to the top, she reaches that golden bird and gets the biggest surprise of her life, because she finds once she reaches there, she becomes the golden bird. There was no other bird at all. So teach your children that higher bird, that golden bird, is always there inside them, waiting for them to come and consult it, to be their friend, waiting to be their friend. But nature has made us so all our sense organs are turned only outwards. It's the seductions of the world that are drawing us in. Very rarely do we look inside ourselves. And if we did and went to that golden friend who's always inside waiting for us, we will find solace. So what I mean by that is, teach your children to trust their gut, to trust their instinct, not to look outside for validation. And how will they learn to trust their gut? Because if you look at the Gita also, Krishna and Arjuna, who are they really? What are their metaphors for? Krishna and Arjuna. Arjuna is the questioning part of us, the very human part of us, who's so looking for validation from everybody else, who's so confused by emotions, has no clarity at all. And Krishna is just his inner voice. We all have a Krishna within us. That is our gut. That is our instinct. It always knows. But how do we communicate with that Krishna or Allah or Jesus or Vaheguru, whatever you want to call, or Devi, whatever, why should it be a man? Okay, somebody inside you. How do you connect with that? Only by putting effort into building a strong relationship with that voice. If you don't put the effort, like Krishna, Arjuna had put years into his relationship with Krishna. They were such good friends that he could just, whenever anything, he was in any kind of pickle, he would just put it in Krishna's hands and say, boss, you tell me what to do. Krishna would tell him what to do, and it would work. And okay. So every time that iteration happens, you begin to trust Krishna more, right? The same thing happens. Follow your instinct, follow your instinct, follow your instinct. In the beginning, you may not know which is your instinct and which is your monkey mind fooling you into doing what is convenient. But by and by, as you trust your instinct more and more, you will begin to rely on it. And that's the best thing. So teach your children to rely on their inner Krishnas. Tell them that there is somebody inside. Whenever something happens, instead of rushing to give them an answer yourself, suppose they've had a fight with their friends or they're feeling upset about something, give them whatever advice, loving advice you could, but do tell them to go and sit by themselves. Think about it. Ask themselves how they feel. They did this action. How do you feel about it? If you had done the alternative thing, how would you have felt about it? What can you do to feel better? Maybe an apology to that person, maybe making yourself strong. Let them come to their answers. Then you are equipping them for life. You know that thing, right? So give a man a fish and feed him for a day, but teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. So teach your children to fish. Teach your children to find their own strong inner voice. It's there. You're needed only for a few years. After that, they are on their own. So teach them to trust themselves. Okay, and two more things. One from the Aranyakas Upanishad, one of my most favorite stories. It's about Prajapati. So in the Upanishads, many times the gurus were also the fathers. The fathers themselves became the gurus. So what you see as a guru-shishya relationship is also a parent-child relationship in the Upanishads, and this is one of those. So Prajapati was the father of the Devas, the Asuras, and the humans. And he also was their preceptor, their teacher. He taught them for 12 years in the Gurukul. And when they were leaving, they had finished, they were graduating, then the Devas came to him and said, Father, give us something to remember, like some mantra or something that we can always recall. And Prajapati looked at them and said, sure, let me think. And he said, Da. Okay, so the Devas said, Da, beautiful, wonderful, we'll remember this all our lives. And Prajapati said, excuse me, what did you understand? When I said Da, what did you understand? So the Devas said, you meant Da for Damyata, right? Restraint, hold back, don't go all out, don't be vulgar in your excesses. Just have some restraint, whatever you do, whether you're partying or you're playing or you're working, restraint, please. Emotion, restraint. Don't go over the top about anything. So Prajapati said, yes, I'm impressed. That's exactly what I meant, because he knew that his children, the Devas, were given to excess. They were always doing everything extra, very extra. So he said, good, Damyata, go away. And then the next, thank you, they left. And then the humans came. And the humans said, what did you tell them? We also want, can you also tell us something? And he said, sure. And he looked at them and said, Da. And the humans said, wow, that's amazing. Thank you, Dad. And he said, what did you understand? What did I say? Da. They said, you meant Da for Datta, right? Give it away, let go, don't hold on to things so tight, give it away. And Prajapati said, well, I'm very impressed, my human children. This is exactly what I meant, because he knew his human children had the tendency to hold on to things, hold on to relationships, hold on to children, not letting them go. Like so many parents, helicopter parents, will not let the child grow and go. So I hold on to anger, hold on to grudges, hold on to jealousies. Let it go, like that child in Frozen, right? In that film. Let it go, let it go. So let it go. Datta, just let it go, be detached. So the humans said, yeah, wonderful. And they went away. Then, of course, the Asuras, whose only problem is that they're always feeling insecure about everything. And therefore, they make bad choices. They always feel that they are not the favorite children. And father is doing partiality. So they're like, what did you tell them? We also want. Please tell us also something. And he said, boss, I'm going to tell you exactly what I told the others. And he looked at them and said, da. And the Asura said, oh, thank you, father. Very nice. We love it. And he said, what did I mean by da? And they said, you meant da for dayadhvam, right? Be kind, be compassionate. Daya, be compassionate. And he said, wow, I'm very impressed with you guys also. You also got exactly what I was trying to say, because he knew that his Asura children had a cruel streak and they were often mean and, cruel for no reason at all. They hurt people. They said mean things. So he said exactly, and he sent them off. And this story from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad has such a beautiful ending. It says that, and that is why whenever the thunder rolls across the sky, we hear da da da, so that all of us will always remember Prajapati's instructions to his children. Of course, the next question is, but we are human. One da would have been enough. Why does it go da da da? Though that's for the other people, right? We should have heard only one da. And then comes the true core of this story, which says that there are no demons and no gods outside of you. All those demons are inside of you. All those gods are inside of you. Sometimes our divine nature rises to the top and we are feeling very generous, wonderful, because we are also partying hard and binge watching on Netflix, very full, very, very nice, lovely. And, feeling very like gods because we have everything. We are so happy, but we overdo it. So then we need the first damyata, hold back. And sometimes we behave very human. We get the human side of our nature comes to the top and we hold on to things too tightly, let it go, datta. And sometimes, all too often, actually, the demonic side of our nature rises to the surface and we are just mean for no reason at all. We are insecure. We are troubled by doubt. And that makes us behave so badly towards everybody. And that time, dayadhvam, not only to others, dayadhvam, to yourself. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, right? And that is so teach your children that it is within them the ability to be either gods or demons. It all depends on the choices they make, and teach them to make good choices, or let them know that there is nothing outside of you. You contain all of it inside, and all you have to do is reach for that golden bird that is sitting there inside of you, urging you to reach for your highest self, to come, be with me, stay here on top of the tree, golden in the sunlight. Why are you all messing about in that dark foliage underneath? Come up. There's such a beautiful view. When you sit there, you don't see a view and you get caught up in your own nonsense. So teach your children to do that. And and then of course, teach them the 4 great Mahavakyas from the Upanishads. Teach them that they are not their bodies. They're not their little limited bodies at all. They are not their little limited minds at all. They are indomitable, invincible spirits. So anything that someone may do to your body or say to hurt your mind, the spirit should be able to pull back and say, that is something that happened to the body. This disease, this suffering, this pain, it's happening to the body. I am not affected by it. This mind is cauldron of emotions. It will do what it does. When somebody says something mean, it goes into its spiral, let it go. It can't touch me because I am bigger than all this. And what are those Mahavakyas from the Upanishads that say this? Aham Brahmasmi, I am God. Which other philosophy or religion, apart from the Indic ones, say anything like this? There is always a feeling that there is some higher being and we have to try to get there. This turns it upside down. Say, you are the higher being, my friend. It's inside you. You only have to reach for it, and teach your children this, that they're indomitable. Aham Brahmasmi, but also teach them the next one. It's not that only I am God. Tat Tvamasi, so are you the same. Every other person, every other creature, every other tree and rock and river contains that same divine spark that makes you you. So nobody is to be treated as anything less or anything higher than you. You will never think of yourself as inferior to anybody else, but certainly you will also not think of yourself as superior to anything else. We are all part of this great web, and we are all required to do our duties, our dharmas, to keep this whole thing in balance. So just be your best self every day. No need to compete with anybody else. You are already, there's no So what they say is, it's not a process of becoming. We don't have to become anything in this life. We already are. What we need to work towards is the process of remembering who we really are. We are not powerless. We are not insignificant. We are not irrelevant. We contain the cosmos within ourselves. The same divine spark that keeps the planets spinning in their orbits around the sun is the one that lets us wake up in the morning and do the good or the bad we do. So choose to be good. Thank you. I shall stop here. Thank you very much. And I hope you enjoyed that. And if there are any questions, I'll try to take a few, because of course I have overshot my time and it's already 6 o'clock. So if any of you has to leave, that's fine. But if you have questions, I'm happy to try to take them. I'm no expert.
Anyone who has questions can drop them in the chat box, and we'll quickly take a question and answer session then. There's a question that says, any books you recommend?
Oh, thank you, Ida.
To understand the Upanishads, that's the complete questions. Are there any books that you recommend to understand the Upanishads?
Actually, when I was researching for my own book, The Vedas and Upanishads for Children, I found that books somehow didn't satisfy me entirely. So I listened to a lot of discourses by a lot of different people. I think the Upanishads are best conveyed through example and parable and metaphor, and it's better if somebody is explaining it to you. So I think, my personal favorite guru is Swami Sarvapriyananda of the Ramakrishna Mission, Vedanta Society in New York. And there are plenty of discourses by him available online, so you could see those.
Okay, there is one more question that says, how do you explain the mythological stories to children, like the head cutting of Ganesha by Shiva?
I know. So the thing is, these stories exist on so many levels. So you have to think about them a bit yourself before you begin to explain to children what it means. And sometimes just the superficial level is also, but I remember that when we grew up on Amritsar Katha, right? So they were such favorite books of mine. So when my children were born, also first thing I did was go and get Ganesha, Hanuman, Krishna, these three. I'm like, okay, I have to read it to my children. And my children were so traumatized by all the books, because Ganesha, it was only fighting and war, and many pages of the book is only that. Krishna is like babies being smashed and their skulls being broken. Okay. And Hanuman, the first thing was he burns his whole mouth, he flies towards the sun. So it was very traumatic. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but try and find the metaphorical meanings of all these, or maybe start off with just telling them the sweeter stories about Ganesha and Krishna, and then slowly come to that. It is a difficult one. There are many. Yeah.
Okay. Any advice?
Thank you all so much for the nice. Yeah. Any advice for?
Any advice for children for the COVID times that we're living in, as kids are scared, depressed by the things happening around?
I know. But I think even more than kids are the adults who are scared and depressed. And we end up passing on our fear to the kids, I think, because kids by themselves are quite resilient. But I know if there's somebody in the close family that they have lost, then obviously there is this fear. What do you tell kids? I think you ask them to just stay strong and pray. I think at this kind of time, bhakti would really help. To believe that there is some bigger plan to this, even though you may not believe it yourself right now, it just feels like everything is random. But to have faith in something, in a larger reason for all this happening, or just to keep the faith while everything is crumbling around you, just emphasize to them that they are indomitable, that death is not the end, even if they've lost a close family member. I think I saw a question of, how do you explain death to them? That that our spirits keep on living. This is just I mean, it's a difficult one to explain, but like in the Western thing, they always say your grandmother has become a star in the sky or something. It hasn't gone away, but you have to tell them that the energy that was your grandmother is going to be, runs through you, and it's up to you to then celebrate her life and everything she was to you by living happily or contentedly and with fearlessness, and to help somebody else. I think a great way to tell children is also to take them out of themselves, is to get them to help somebody else, to see that they are actually very privileged, and there are people who are worse off than them. That can take you out of yourself. This is both for adults and children. When you're feeling at your lowest, if you go and work with somebody who needs more than you do, immediately you get taken out of your own problems, shrink. So that is one way to do it.
There's another question that says how to reduce hyperactivity and encourage focus and attention in children.
So, I mean, I have heard this a lot and I believe it. And my friend Smita is here. She would be able to tell you more. But actually learning to recite Sanskrit shlokas, learning them, it's a great way to bring focus and calm. Because the words are difficult. And if you can just give them an understanding of what they mean and let them do it, it actually focuses your entire mind on that. There is no place for anything else when you're trying to learn an English verse. They'll learn in 5 minutes. Okay, but try to get them to learn a Sanskrit verse. I think that is a great thing for focus. I think so. I mean, I can't do it. I'm so bad at it, but yeah. But I know how much effort it takes for me to learn. And for children, it won't take that much effort, of course, because their brains are much younger and sprightlier than ours. Yeah. So
there's another question on parenting that says, any tips to restrain parents from not getting annoyed or impatient while dealing with their kids?
I think I don't know, why do parents get impatient with their kids? That's the thing to see. Why do you get impatient? Because you are so full of you're very busy, you are stressed about something, so some other thing going can is all obviously going to throw you off the rails. So I think this is more a question of how parents should calm down, breathe, do meditation, figure out a way to make yourself calm. Then children or anything else will not irritate you at all. So there's that Buddhist story, right? But the Buddha used to tell the story that there are always two arrows coming at you. The first arrow that harms you is what comes from the world. All kinds of nonsense will be happening in the world around you at every single moment, and some of it will attack you personally, will come and hurt you personally. Okay, so that is the first arrow, and that has the ability to hurt you, of course, and you cannot stop it because you cannot control the world. The second arrow that hurts you more and is more impactful is your reaction to that. That arrow you can control. That is entirely within your control. So the first arrow will keep coming, you can't help it. Second arrow, try and control it. And that's the advice I give to parents. If you can count to 10, hold off that arrow, breathe. Because, there's the other thing is there's a very strong belief in Indian philosophy, which says that, not only belief, it's the truth, that your breath and your emotions are very closely linked. So even in English, the words that are used for emotion, she gasped, she sighed, heaved a sigh of relief, her breaths were shallow when she's fearful. So every emotion is accompanied by a change in breath. So every few couple of hours, if you can just take 2 minutes to yourself and breathe 10 deep breaths, if the breath settles, so will the emotion. So you can bring yourself back to homeostasis, like bring yourself back to calm and then proceed with your day. It's a great exercise, I'm telling you. And the other thing is that you're told that you're only given a certain number of breaths for each lifetime. So if you are stressed and breathe harder and are angry all the time and stressed, and then you'll use up all your breaths quickly. Instead, if you just breathe slow, you will have a longer life and it'll be a more peaceful one. So anything else?
Everybody writing about how much they loved every bit of the session. And it was extremely insightful. Thank you so much for doing this for everybody, the parents and our children alike. And I think
I'm
all
glad
of
that
us,
everyone seems to be saying that the stories were so inspirational. So the best part is I didn't write the stories, they've been there always. We haven't accessed them. They are the golden bird. We just have to reach out for them. They're there waiting. Right. So if all of us can access those stories, you won't be needing to ask anybody questions about how do I do this. It's all there, the answers. Yeah. Thanks, Suma. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, sorry. I interrupted you, Mansi.
No problem. We all are here to listen to you. So I think every single minute was so much of learning, and it was so wise. I mean, I'm so glad that all of us came here today. And thanks to all the diatom, if that's the correct word, and the God inside all of us who have contributed to this cause of supporting the education of underprivileged children under the Back to School program. I want to happily announce that we have been able to raise rupees 38,500, which is a huge amount that will go a long way to pay the salaries of our teachers who have been braving this pandemic to impart education to the children who did not have online resources, who were on the verge of losing education forever. And it is all because of all you kind souls who contributed. So many of you even donated more than the ticket price just because you wanted to contribute to the cause. And thank you so much, Rupa ma'am, for connecting us with such souls who came forward. In fact, I would like to request all of you that if in any way, not just monetarily, if you want to help us with the some skill, some workshop or anything, it's, we all just need a compassionate heart, and we all can reach the golden bird and help the others in need. It is very, very important that this section of the society that was badly hit by the pandemic because of poverty, starvation, loss of jobs, and many, many girls who are now continuing to be the victims of patriarchy, it's very important that we do something for them. And Back to School program is doing exactly that with the great support that all of you have shown us. I am just so grateful. And the entire team of Indian Women Blog is so grateful towards all of you for coming forward, for doing this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Congratulations on the good work, and keep it up. And we will all, I'm sure I can see right in front of me among my friends, so many who have so many skills to contribute, maybe do, art sessions or music or theater, I'm sure they will be contacting you after this to offer.
Yeah. My number, I'm just putting my number in the chat box. So anyone who wishes to connect with me for any possible help in any way, that'll be great. Please feel free to contact me for the same.
Thank you, Mansi. Thank you all so much for coming and contributing. Bye.
And I have also put the link for your course that begins on Monday. So everybody can check the details out there. Sure. I'll also share the link in the group again.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Namaste.